we gave them unconditional acceptance and love and nurturement. That was, otherwise they would have been massacred at the beach.
When the English first came, my father was a great man, and the English, a little child. He constrained other Indians from harming the English. He gave the English corn and showed them how to plant. He let them have 100 times more land than now I have for my own people. King Phillip, Wampanoag.
For almost 40 years, while the Plymouth colony rapidly expanded, Massasoit maintained peace between his Wampanoag and the English.
The Massasoit of the Wampanoag Nation, he was a magnificent peacekeeper. And that 50 years of peace maintained between us and the English was really due to his intelligence, integrity, and love for the people.
By the time of Massasoit's death in 1660, a new generation had risen to power in Plymouth. They had long forgotten his generosity. Leadership passed to Massasoit's 24-year-old son, Philip. He would become known as King Philip.
But then when Philip took over, he was a different sort of a person. He was going to fight to the end for his people.
In 1662, when King Philip came to power, the growing colonies held 50,000 residents. In New England, Indian nations found themselves surrounded. Their agricultural lands shrinking, many Wampanoag were left with little choice but to work for the English as laborers and servants. But it wasn't just land and liberty they were losing. Their culture and traditions were also under attack.
The English, they thought of Wampanoags as inferior from all the way around, from the standpoint, especially the religion. And then as a people, they were savages.
Zealous Puritans set out to convert them, pressuring many to abandon their homes and beliefs and to move to newly established praying towns. With little regard for the laws of the sovereign Wampanoag nation, the English arrested King Philip's people for violating the Puritan code of ethics, the Blue Laws. Individuals were prosecuted for hunting and fishing on the Sabbath, for using Indian medicine, and entering into non-Christian marital unions.
The women, when we went out for our moon lodge and spent time alone or with our friends who also had their moon at the same time, and we sit out there in the woods alone chatting and purifying, they made laws against us that we couldn't do that we needed to be in the village, we needed to be working, except for on the Sabbath.
In Plymouth, Indian people were sentenced to death for denying the Christian religion.
Pray or be shot was the method of conversion. That's how the first Christian Indians had Christianity brought to them.
King Philip took an uncompromising stand against the repression.
You see this vast country before us, which the Creator gave to our fathers. You see these little ones, our wives and children. And you now see the foe before you. They have grown insolent and bold. All our ancient customs are disregarded. Treaties made by our fathers are broken. Our brothers murdered before our eyes. King Philip, Wampanoag.
15 years after his father's death, King Philip finally urged his people to war.
Our ancestors' spirits cry to us for revenge. These people from the unknown world will cut down our groves, spoil our hunting and planting grounds, and drive us and our children from the graves of our fathers.
King Philip had no other choice because his land was being taken away. His people, the allegiance of his people, was being eroded. The war itself was not only over land, it was also over the right to follow our own traditions the Creator had given us.
On June 24th, 1675, King Philip's War began. In a brilliantly orchestrated series of forays, several English towns were caught off guard and burned to the ground by the Wampanoag and their allies.
An Indian never forgets a kindness, but he never forgives a wrong. And because there had been so much kindness shown during those good years between Massasoit, King Philip's father, and those settlers that came, King Philip never forgot any of those families had been close to he and his family. And he spared them. He actually even sent warnings to some of those families during the war that their towns would be burned so they could escape with their families.
As Indian victories mounted, hysteria gripped the settlements. It was reported that Indian troops hung upon the fringes of the English towns like the lightning on the edge of clouds. On the side of a bridge over the Charles River, one of King Philip's men posted a taunting message.
Know by this paper that the Indians that you have provoked to wrath and anger will war, if you will. There are many Indians yet. You must consider the Indians lose nothing but their life. You must lose your fair houses and cattle. James, Nipmuc.
Through the fall and winter, fortune favored King Philip's forces. Then, a series of defeats demoralized some Wampanoag allies.
The Great Swamp Massacre was where over 300 Native American old women and children were all burnt alive in their wigwams just 6 days before Christmas, December 19th, 1675. And one historian recorded that the smell of burning flesh so moved one of the Pilgrim soldiers that he later asked one of his superiors whether burning their enemies alive was consistent with the benevolent principles of the gospel.
The fortunes of war were turning. With the coming of spring, their winter food stores were depleted and they were unable to plant or replenish their supplies. King Philip's people were starving, and English troops hunted them as though trailing a wounded animal. In May, the English attacked an Allied Indian force camped above the falls on the Connecticut River. 300 Indian people were killed. Some managed to reach their canoes, but in their haste left behind their paddles and were swept over the falls to their deaths. For the next 2 months, King Philip and his people evaded capture, but the noose was tightening. In August, English troops fell upon his camp, killing or capturing 173. King Philip narrowly escaped, but among those captured were his wife and 9-year-old son. In Plymouth, the clergy decided their fate. They were sold into slavery in Bermuda.
My heart breaks. Now, I am ready to die.
He would choose where he would die. King Philip returned to his home at Montauk, where his father, Massasoit, had often fed and entertained the pilgrims decades earlier. In the dawn light of August 12th, 1676, an English and Indian army surrounded the sleeping camp. Moments later, King Philip was dead, shot through the heart by an Indian mercenary. King Philip's head was put on display in Plymouth, where it remained for the next 20 years.
We all have a purpose, a role in life, and the Creator, in all of his wisdom, saw fit to spare us. We all could have been burned alive in the Great Swamp. We all could have been slaughtered in that war. But we were left here for a reason, and I believe that part of that reason is to be a conscience for this society, to prevent those same kinds of mistakes from continuing to be repeated over and over. That's what I see as my purpose, as the purpose of all of our native people who will stand up and continue with that spirit that King Philip, Pontiac, Geronimo, all of our great leaders have had.